Hey guys, it's Ashley Francis with Blue Sage Counseling and Wellness, and today we are here to talk about attachment and attachment theory, most specifically the 4 different types of attachment. So these are some pretty common terms that we use in the world of psychology and counseling, and I think it's good for a lot of folks to have a good running understanding of what attachment is, what the theory is all about, and also to be able to identify what their attachment style is and being able to understand how we all relate to one another. The purpose of today's video is the first in a series of several where we're introducing attachment theory, and then in subsequent videos we'll be breaking down each one of the styles individually. So let's just jump right into it. Straightforwardly, attachment is it's how we develop close bonds with each other. Whether we do or we don't. It's how we relate to one another. And John Bowlby, one of the founders of attachment theory, defines attachment as lasting psychological connectedness between human beings. So when we are securely attached, that is a sign of emotional and relational health. When we are not securely attached, then that is a symptom of some deeper lying issues that perhaps need some more attention. That being said, let's talk a little bit about attachment theory further. So the founders of attachment theory, as I stated, are John Bowlby and Mary Ainsworth. They are 2 mental health practitioners that performed various studies in the 1950s with infants and their caregivers. It's a really interesting study. I love talking about it. So basically what they did was they had an infant as well as their caregivers come into the room, and then they instructed the caregivers to leave the room, and then John and Mary, they would evaluate the way that the infant reacted to the caregivers leaving. And what they found was the infant that was securely attached would whine, they would cry, they would long for their caregivers, as is shown to be developmentally appropriate. But what they also found is that with insecurely attached infants, they would find that the infant on the outside, externally, would not be showing any signs of physiological arousal, no emotional arousal. But what they also found is that they had the infant tied up to or connected to a heart monitor, and they found significant physiological arousal. So that means increased heart rate, increased breath rate. Basically what this is saying is that the child has been primed, they have been conditioned to not be emotional on the outside, but they can be deeply emotional on the inside in reaction to the caregiver leaving. You can imagine that this translates into adulthood in various ways, but it's also not difficult to see that it's a pretty direct transition from infancy into adulthood, depending on how we were treated by our caregivers. And I say caregiver because this doesn't always mean a parent. Sometimes it could be someone that has adopted the child or just simply raising the child. It's not always your parents. Let's talk about the 4 different types of attachment styles. Now, before I get into this, I want to give a very, very big disclaimer that it's important to keep in mind as we go through this that the types of attachment styles that you have are going to vary depending on the relationship. The argument here is how we relate to people most of the time is our predominant style. But that doesn't mean that there aren't exceptions. So the way that you interact with your partner is going to be different from how you interact with your mother. You may be securely attached to your partner, you may be insecurely attached to your mother, and that can show up in various ways. So keep in mind that there are little minor nuances, but typically how we act in one relationship is how we act in other relationships as well. So there can be a predominant style. The second thing to keep in mind is that if you're having some negative feelings and feeling some guilt or shame as you start to realize, oh gosh, that sounds like me. I'm more of an insecurely attached person. Take this all with a grain of salt. This is a really good way to start. Think of it as a starting point to be able to get to know yourself on a deeper level and to understand that these things can be changed. They can absolutely get better. And oftentimes it doesn't take a lot of time. It takes a lot of effort, but it doesn't take a lot of time to be able to start to see a change. So I encourage you to, again, just take this all with a grain of salt. Just see it as something that is more educational in nature and go from there. Okay, so the first one is the secure attachment style. This is obviously the most ideal. It's when we are comfortable displaying interest and affection with those around us, particularly with our romantic partners or with family, those that we have familiar and comfortable intimacy with. We are not afraid to engage in displays of affection, and that doesn't always have to be physical. It can also be verbal, but these types of people that practice this type of attachment style have comfort in being able to get close, but they are also comfortable when they are by themselves as well, because they trust that the relationships that they have are secure and that they'll be able to rely on them once again. So the next one is the anxious attachment style, and this is characterized by needing constant reassurance and affection from their partner. Constant reassurance and affection from their partner. I see this one an awful lot in my practice. It is also the attachment style that I most closely can identify with historically. I've done a lot of work to increase my secure attachment styles, but this is the one that during times of stress, I always go back to. Basically, this comes from having caregivers that were not very consistent. They may have caused you to fend for yourself, either physically, emotionally, all of the above. They may not have provided a lot of emotional support. You just kind of had to figure things out on your own. Never really taught you how to navigate life and to do the big things, and you just may be anxious by nature as well. That can be another factor. And then it is no surprise that you can develop an anxious attachment style as well. The next one is avoidant. So this type of person is independent. They're self-directed, and they're often uncomfortable with intimacy. So this is the type of person that runs away when there's any whiff of any sort of emotional talk or trying to talk about feelings and getting on the same page with a person. This is the type of person that tends to shut down. They like to keep to themselves. They might even get angry and push back on the partner that is trying to push them to come closer. This is the type of dynamic that we see very often with couples, the pursuer-distancer dynamic. And this doesn't work because the pursuer is in fact pushing the distancer even further away. And then the last one is the anxious avoidant. This can be one of the most difficult styles to treat, but as I said, there's always hope for every single one of these styles. These types of folks are afraid of intimacy and commitment, and they lash out emotionally when anyone tries to get close to them. So they can be kind of tricky. They are hot or cold. You can't get a really good read on them. One minute they're pulling you close, the next minute they're blessing you out and pushing you away. They're really hard to read and very unpredictable. But please understand that at the heart of this person they just want love and connection. That's the truth for all of these attachment styles, is they're just trying to connect with other people. So that will do it for the discussion on attachment and attachment theory. I hope this was information that was helpful enough for you to determine what is your predominant attachment style. Look forward to other videos in the comments section that will go into each one of these individually. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up and let me know in the comments section. And as always, hit that subscribe button. Take care.